Wow.
Wow, this is some really deep stuff.
I don't know what just happened, but something happened inside of me. Something snapped. Something.
I wasn't expecting that
either. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. It's beautiful.
Monster is like really small, but it had to become that to stop me.
And then the hurt child became present when you mentioned it.
And I didn't realize this until now.
There were things that I didn't remember until now.
Funny. I haven't seen that before.
It feels like I'm the monster. I'm kind of seeing images of things. Of a world where they can exist. This clarity brings all kinds of answers.
It's clear. She hugged me and then went back to her place, I guess, in my heart. Oh, it wants to come out. It wants to bippity boppity boop Cinderella me. She's melted into my chest. It's ooey gooey.
All week been finishing things, cleaning up more, started eating vegetables again last week. And it kind of just started happening. It's almost like I just finished going through a meditation session.
I feel light. When you hit that first joint, in the morning, and
I actually feel a lot more awake.
Okay, that was a minute.
Okay. So nothing roared in front of my eyes, screaming, "Look at me, look at me."
Mm-hmm.
But one question came up that I would probably like to just pose with all your IFS experience.
Okay.
So many of my parts I've named.
Mm-hmm.
And it started this whole discussion within myself about several questions. One is, well, who's naming them? Is it self? Is it another part naming the other parts? Mm-hmm. And then the question of what happens when you name them something, like we talked about, I think the hardened guardian.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're not that anymore. Their nature changes. Do they rename? And then I have one part, Sally, which I find it makes me giggle every time I say her name, but she chose that name, which I find interesting because she's a pure manager, serious manager. She's not anymore. And Sally applies to anything, really, doesn't it? You can be anything when you name Sally.
I'm not sure what that means.
Well, so when I name something the hardened guardian.
Oh, I get it. It's not a descriptive name.
Specific description, right? Whereas Sally is just a name.
Yes.
So that's kind of my question back to you with all your experience personally.
Right.
There's your thoughts on that, about naming and how that works, plays out over the course of time.
Let me think. I think that often when we first encounter a part, we're just noticing, let's say it's a protector, we're noticing its kind of extreme energy. And so our first thought, our first reaction is, this is the angry one, it's the angry one. And that sometimes becomes the name, especially when you're working with someone, to use just so we both know what we're talking about. But typically, the part, it doesn't want to be angry, and it doesn't see itself. It might think that that's its role. Maybe that's its role, but it will tell us, all the positive qualities for it. It's really a passionate, protective one, and it would rather be called that. So, I'm usually, when it comes to naming, I think the safest bet is to ask parts what they would rather be called, or how they feel about the name they've been given.
Yeah. That makes sense to me because, Sally is the only part I have that I asked, what are you called?
Mm-hmm.
And she answered.
Mm-hmm.
And it really has made me giggle ever since. And I thought, she's probably done that also because I find it so funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
And different people use different names, like to have different degrees of how much naming they're doing. For me, when it comes to my exile parts, I don't think any of them have names. There's the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old and the 5-year-old, and there might even be multiple. And I keep them in my little notebook as 4-year-old. I haven't really given them names or asked about names with them, and nobody seems to have a problem with that in my system.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually, like I said before, naming protectors based on their characteristics, which they will often ask me to change after I get to know them. And my exiles aren't really getting names or asking for them.
That's helpful. It's funny, I have this inner kind of intuition that as I work with my parts, they and I don't, at least not now, want to do any mapping or any recording or, kind of trying to sort it out in that way. We all seem to be we want to know each other, we want to get to know each other, but it doesn't need to be a research assignment kind of feeling. And of course, my worldly me is very analytical. So there is this a bit of a leaning and a questioning back kind of cynicism to that general feeling of my parts and my true self, of just, we don't need to cast this into any kind of stone. So I just also thought I'd ask on your feedback from that.
Yeah, I think as long as you can get back to parts that you promised to get back to. To me, that's kind of that's one of the most important things when it comes to naming, identifying parts, is really just for my own notes, so that when I make a promise to a part, I'm able to find them again because I've got that breadcrumb of this is what they look like, this is what they're called.
And is it usually unidirectional like that? So when you work with a part and you make a promise, I'll be back, does the part not, is there something special about making a promise and then the self being the one to make contact, as opposed to when the part wants attention, it says, hey, hi, ho, here? Or what's the dynamic there, do you think?
I would encourage that to be self's proactive activity, because yeah, I mean, we can wait for parts to get our attention, but I think that's kind of what life before self-leadership is it's reactive, and parts show up when they're loud, and by that time it's a problem. So
okay. So in conversation with a system that's more self-led or more whole or more in balance, whatever the term is that suits, it's not just a constant checking in all directions, like parts, not in the kind of extreme that require like big emotion type things, but just in a hey, we're still here and I don't know. I don't know. I guess at the moment. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a few different approaches that I shuffle between. So one is, just being open. What's up for me now? Who needs my attention? So that it maybe is less proactive, right? I don't have anyone on my list that I'm going to go visit.
Yeah.
And then I kind of alternate between that and the more proactive, who's next. And for that, the way I keep notes is, I will mark off, okay, I have this part and this part to visit next. And I personally am putting my notes into a digital place, so that I can sort them by when they are most recently modified. And I can just say, here's the part at the bottom of the list that I have not thought about, visited in the longest amount of time. So sometimes I'll approach it that way.
Okay. That's an interesting thought.
But I definitely have the part of me that would rather just play with the digital apps and the list making and spend more time doing that than actually doing parts work. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to anyone.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. I think with this for me, it's been very productive and it's been very, very insightful. And I just don't want it to turn into some, like a research project. I want it to feel real. Do you know what I mean by not removed from it? Because it's so easy for me I'm very good at distancing and I don't want to distance from the process too far.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I guess, what I'm trying to express.
Yeah. I think you named it accurately before, calling it an analytical part. And you've mentioned it in other calls. So that's a strong part of you. And if that part of you is getting in the way of your work, you can work with that one on that.
Yeah. Maybe that's a place to start with the analytic part, because I know it's there. It so forms how I interact with the world. And it informs a lot about my internal system. There's that narrator and fact checking and but I've never spent any time with that part. I just kind of, it's a big part of who I am and how I experience the world. Doesn't necessarily make me uncomfortable in any way, but I do think it limits, if the self speaks, the self would say it limits my openness, and it in some way is probably playing that pump the brake a bit.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it's always looking for answers to things and not ever able to really let things fully rest without some kind of analysis.
Yeah.
And so maybe that part has something to share. So maybe we start there.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
How do you notice that part when it shows up? What's it feel like?
It's very heady. It's kind of active brain feel. So it's located in the head, kind of right-sided, above the eye kind of space.
Okay. Yeah, so just focusing there. The next question is, how do you feel towards it?
I've always liked this part, but I am curious about its fullness now, as opposed to just being a superficial, oh, you're there, you're fine by me. So I feel curious.
Okay, let it know you're curious. Invite it to notice you.
It's quite friendly. It's happy enough that I'm here.
Okay. You could ask it what it wants you to know about itself.
It says quite easily and quite freely that all the analyzing has been a protection. It's another form of distancing.
Mm-hmm.
It limits the emotions. If you're always analyzing, it creates a distance. You're analyzing the problem instead of being in a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thanking it for that because it's been a very useful thing in my life. It's saying it also helps keep you directed. So
Mm-hmm.
you're protected and directed, because if you're analyzing something, then you always have a direction to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thanking it for that because that has been also very useful in my life.
Yeah.
Saying and telling it that I appreciate it and that I recognize all it's done for me.
Of those things, of the distancing, the limiting emotions, analyzing instead of being in a problem, and directing, does any of those feel kind of the most like emotionally salient or have some urgency about it?
There's no particular one. The collection of them feels salient, but it's more of that. I think we spoke about another part, and I can't even remember which one it was, about the moat digging.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a different flavor of that. It's like Baskin Robbins, 21 flavors. This is my 21 flavors of protection.
Mm-hmm.
Most often by distancing.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
What's it afraid would happen if it didn't do that?
Saying that the system, I would be very vulnerable. And it's saying Sally would have a hard time functioning because the analysis is very useful to Sally, who's the real, manager par excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying to it, but do you recognize that Sally's no longer, she's chosen not to be in that role, that she's off somewhere else. She hasn't really assumed a new role, but she's not in that role anymore. And it's kind of saying, well, I'm I'm the deputy, I'm the stand-in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been deputized to watch over the system in my own, while she's stepped aside.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to assure it that it's doesn't need a deputy. And then thanking it for deputizing.
Well, it believes that you would be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could ask it to show you more about that vulnerability that it has a concern about.
Okay, I'll do that. So again, my parts often have this tendency of kind of the movie reel.
Mm-hmm.
Showing me little clips. And it's showing me clips of how this home expertise has brought me into situations in life that have kept me literally safe, provided a roof over my head, provided money, provided interesting work, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And that it has also brought many instances of success.
Mm-hmm.
The capacity to use that analytic part. It's
Mm-hmm. How long has it been in that role?
It started very young. It's saying that it realized very early on that it could, 1 and 1 was 2, and that not everyone saw that. So as long as I saw that, it was a way of staying safe.
Yeah. But this was before the house and the money and the career.
Yeah, this is when I was a kid.
Yeah, so how did that keep you safe then?
It's saying that it helped me stay one step above anything, one step not above, but one step ahead. Because it would analyze the landscape instead of emotionally engage in it.
Mm-hmm.
So most often I wouldn't be caught up in a flare-up or caught up in a whatever chaos was going on. I'd be a bystander.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an effective caution.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's saying that it was helping to protect the little one.
Okay.
The capacity to think, the capacity to understand situations that were complex and chaotic.
Yeah.
Helped. Just, it was, number one, it was also soothing. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not chaotic when you're logically thinking.
Yeah, so the little one was dealing with some chaotic situations and some flare-ups. And this part soothed it and distanced it.
Yeah. And it's saying from there into the later, it runs across, as I guess this is how it happens. In the different exiles that I have, which are
Mm-hmm.
chronologically, we've talked about this, chronologically arranged.
Mm-hmm.
That its function remained the same, but had different outcomes and
Mm-hmm.
different applications with
Mm-hmm.
maturity.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my self is radiating a great degree of warmth towards it. And there's no resistance at all between us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not at all afraid or shying off or in any way. We're just kind of in a mutual respect.
Great.
At the moment.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, it had said that it was concerned that you would be vulnerable if it didn't do that job.
Mm-hmm.
Was it thinking of these young ones being vulnerable, or is it up to date and saying, no, this is for current day you, for self?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And no, it's these younger exiles
Mm-hmm.
that it's referring to. And I was gently trying to say to it, I respect all you've done, your service, and it is so useful. And I wouldn't, necessarily want to be in the world without it.
Right.
But maybe not in the same way. I'm safe, I'm fine. And in fact, I asked it if it could see that it prevents me from being vulnerable in a positive light,
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way. And it wasn't so sure about that.
Okay.
So I've reminded it, or I don't know if it really sees it, that I'm a full-fledged and full-grown adult.
Yeah. Yep. It's important to show it that.
I'm asking it what it might like. Is there anything else it would like to do besides all this analysis and
Great.
And it's saying it likes to do it, that is a strength, and it recognizes that, and I recognize it for it, myself, and it's saying that perhaps there's a different way to be this function. i.e., it's tired because it works overtime all the time. And that it would be more comfortable applying its skill set, its expertise, only when needed.
Yeah. Sounds nice.
Yeah, that was my response to it. We could both, I, self, and it, breathe a bit more. It's expressing some hesitancy, of course, over the exiles wanting me to reassure it, that they're all really fine and
yeah. So how can we do that? How can we catch it up on the work that you have done with the exiles, and also stay curious? Maybe something about them doesn't feel safe and fine.
It asked me if I could take it to visit them. So we're going to do that. We're going to go for a little visit to where they each are now. And it's telling me that perhaps there's it has a sense there's some unresolved needing protection via analysis with the mama bear exile.
Okay.
So I feel fully safe letting go of it in her instance. And it feels content and is glad to see the little one and the middle one where they are, seemingly, much more content.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not as convinced about the mama bear.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's that about?
It's saying that the analytic aspects of mama bear in that time were absolutely a lifesaver in every way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that the dominant relationship of that time demanded it in every way.
Mm-hmm. And
it's saying that it got caught in overdrive, didn't know how to, there's no stopping. It just had to be hyper active in relationship, in professional settings, just in every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how is your relationship with that exile?
Feels a bit incomplete.
Okay.
Which is what I am gleaning from this analytic part. It's tapping into.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Was that next? Should we go and work with that mama bear exile?
Sure. Let's do that.
Okay. Is this part on board with that you'll shift your attention and go there?
It's fine with that and encouraging me to go do that.
Awesome. Okay.
So I've said goodbye for now. We agreed we'd be back together at some natural point, and that I'd check in if there was any real updates or anything needed. And it was fine with that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you access that mama bear one?
Yeah. And she agreed to go somewhere else, wanted to go somewhere else, but she didn't quite make it all the way there. So she's kind of in this limbo place at the moment.
How do you feel towards her?
I feel a lot of compassion, and I feel a lot of curiosity as to what holds her back still.
Great. Yeah, let her know that you're here. You're here to understand. And you can just ask her how she's doing, what she wants you to know about that.
She's saying she's okay, but she feels a bit like she's in Catholic terms hanging in purgatory. She's saying a lot of that comes from the primary relationship of the time. And so I'm asking, what about it? And she's saying there is a fair amount of trauma related to that relationship. And she's commenting on the analytic part and saying, the analytic part was really a bit of a savior in all of it.
Yeah. Yep. Was able to analyze the problem at the time, but she still feels kind of stuck with some of that trauma.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I've asked her, what would it take for her to become unstuck? Does she want to be unstuck? She says she does. She finds it very hard to be stuck in a time and a place that, as we've discussed in the past, is no more.
Yeah, what does she want to show you about her experience to help you really understand what it was like for her? And anywhere that she might still feel stuck or she's carrying burdens.
So she's, again, with the movie reels. They love this.
Now's the time for the movie reels. This is and same with the previous part. That's what we need from them is for them to show you what it was like so that they know that you understand.
So she's walking me through some scenes, some vignettes, and she's saying, "You know these. You're fully aware of these."
She feel like she's still kind of stuck in those?
She's stuck in them. She's saying there's another part which you've called the imposter, meaning me. Labeled the imposter. I don't know if we've spoken about it. I think we have spoken about the imposter. That created an entire perception around everything that was going on then. And that the analytic part was playing defense. So the imposter was creating this external, storyline or narrative. And the analytic part was creating distance from it. So
Mm-hmm.
she's saying the analytic part could always see what was going on. The imposter part made it seem nicer than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the confusion lies.
Okay.
I think I said this earlier. The analytic part played this ability to analyze but not be part of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she's saying really was a problem for her.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
on top of that, there was this whitewashing narrative shift that was always going on. And that was very, very, very deeply harmful to her.
Yeah. Does it all make sense to you?
It does. Does it make sense to you when you hear it?
Yes.
And so she's saying to me at the moment that she needs to feel those two things dissolved and integrated, which sounds a little oxymoronic, but you need to, both is needed to become.
She needs those protectors off her back so she can be herself.
Exactly.
And be with self.
Exactly.
Be accepted, seen, loved.
Yeah.
Yes, and dissolving and integrating. I think that is also, self going and making space for those other parts and welcoming them. That sounds kind of like dissolving and integrating too. So yeah.
It's thanking you for the validation.
Mm-hmm.
She's happy to have the speak back and the validation.
How would it feel for you to join her in some of those times where she still feels a little stuck, and to be there for her in the way that she needed someone?
She's a little bit teary about that idea. She likes it.
Okay. Tears are welcome.
She's saying she just wanted to be heard.
Yeah, can you do that for her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just let her know that. Let her know that you can make space for her tears and anything she wants to tell you. Mm-hmm. And that you can revisit any of those scenes with her.
I'm asking her, is she showing me the scene? Do you want me to say anything about it? And she said, no, I want you to know it and not have anyone shift the narrative of it.
Great. Great. Yep.
So I'm just being present, bearing witness. She's showing me all sorts of scenes. And I do recall them as quite unpleasant, but it feels safe as I'm watching them.
Are you offering to be there for her in those scenes? Or does she feel like that would shift the narrative too much?
I have been more observing what she's showing me, not in this. I didn't ask her anything about it. That was just where
Yeah, try offering that. Just, can I go back with you into one of those scenes, and can I provide whatever it is that you needed?
She said yes.
Have a redo.
Yeah. So she said yes, and she's brought me immediately to a scene.
Okay.
She's asking me to respond to it in a way that would have felt more empowered. Now she's taking me to another one.
Yeah. Be there with her.
Yeah, I'm just speaking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that's what she wants.
She's saying, Thank you for calling it what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not whitewashing it.
Yeah. Yeah, she's saying, I just asked her, what can I do? And she said, stand behind me. Just stand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And witness it with clarity. Just showing a few moments where she just wants me to reassure her that she is actually safe. Not safe because of the analytic assessment, or not safe
Right.
because of some whitewashing, but just, I'm here, self is here, I got you, you're safe. And that
Yes.
feels very different to her.
Yes. Yes.
She's now expressing, tears are coming,
Yeah.
all that was lacking. And I'm standing close by, very close,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
offering all of that.
Yeah.
And there's a discussion, I don't know if it's a realization on her part that this is all possible. All of these things that were so lacking are possible with self.
Yeah. And all of those feelings or tears or anything that she didn't feel like she could express, also possible.
She's saying yes, just to have the appropriate emotions.
Mm-hmm.
To be allowed to have the appropriate emotions. To feel safe enough to have appropriate emotions. And she's actually reaching out to the other exiles from earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also saying this has been a difficulty for them as well.
Yeah. Nice. It's something you can do for them too.
Yeah, they're the three that I primarily work with are all saying it's that, to be granted an audience with self, to feel all the emotions that were theirs and unable to be expressed or shared or owned or lived through, that this distancing and this whitewashing didn't allow for. Just
Yeah.
to own their experience as wholly emotionally
Mm-hmm.
full
Mm-hmm.
range, not shut
Yeah.
off, not governed, not just.
Uh-huh.
And not just to have the emotions, but to have a living presence acknowledge them as okay and
Right.
fine and accept them.
Right.
And the analytic part has come into the foreground and has said, well, this is, if you all in collective, not just Mama Bear, but especially Mama Bear, if you all can have your full orchestra of emotions, the full range, and be loved for it, and be in a loving relationship with self, then I maybe don't have to do this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do it when it's needed.
Yep.
And they're all in response saying, you should find joy in what it is that makes you special and not just overanalyze for us.
Right. Right.
And
Yep. It has its own qualities that it can unlock and
same with the imposter. They feel the same way about the imposter. And self is just elated about all this. Just really, aren't they clever? Look at them.
aren't they? They're beautiful.
Yes, that's exactly how
Yes.
it is. Blessings all around, kind of.
Uh-huh. Does that mama bear part does she have a place, or would she like to come out of that time and reestablish a place with you in the present?
She said she'd like nothing more.
Okay.
And to come out of that time and to reestablish as, yeah, something else.
Okay. Yeah, so you can just set that up with her. Just ask her where that is, what that looks like, who all's invited, and just what she would like in her kind of perfect world.
She's very clear.
Uh-huh.
She's saying she wants to be an advisor. But that's a more appropriate way for her to be in kind of the modern, growing, aging place that I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
and not be stuck back in times.
Okay.
That she'd like to kind of be able to evolve and become with self
Mm-hmm.
as a wise elder type role.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. You can just envision that with her and can kind of create that space with her and for her.
She's saying that the mother bear, although it's not a bad label, it's a stunting label.
Okay. All right. Well, now's her chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You can ask her if she'd like a different label.
And she just said mothering.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be really anything other than that.
Yeah. Does she have any place in her body where she is carrying any of her burdens?
Yeah, neck and shoulders.
Okay, neck and shoulders. And is she ready to give those up? And how would she like to give those up?
She's saying it's like a yoke,
Hmm.
a wooden yoke, and so she'd like to burn it.
Hmm. help her out with that.
We're watching together.
Yeah. You can kind of keep checking, ask her to be thorough. If there's anywhere else in her body, any more that she wants to give up.
Yeah. She says, I have more to throw on the fire pyre.
All right.
We're doing that. Funny, as we're doing this, there's some other part that's coming in.
Yeah. What's it want you to know?
I don't know. I should ask it. It's saying to fully release that there's a part, this part that showed up, that has to do with relationship
Mm-hmm.
and conditions that
Mm-hmm.
were actively set with the little one and reinforced in the mothering exile.
Does it make sense to you?
It does.
Okay.
And the mothering exile is acknowledging the presence of this part, kind of nodding her head.
Mm-hmm.
She's saying she knows she can't be fully released until she acknowledges the protection of it's really more of a deficit reaction. So this part is addressing a deficit from an earlier part in life.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me a lot of what the middle one told us in our last conversation about. It was saying it could only release so much because of I believe it felt voiceless because of what it saw the little one carrying the same burden.
Yeah.
So this kind of reminds me of that. In there's a deficit. It actually started at a younger time, and this part doesn't quite feel ready or able to release that until it's addressed and acknowledged in the other time.
And this is quite, I'm assuming, quite a conventional response with having these exiles that are time-specific exiles, that there's this trickle on and trickle back effect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen some practitioners they're just kind of always, okay, what's the bottom denominator? Who's the youngest here is often what's directing their work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing less of that here, and you typically, but that could be at least next steps.
So identifying the common denominator.
Yeah, so when an exile says, well, there's this younger exile, it could be, okay, let's go there, and just kind of keep looking for the younger and younger, to kind of searching for the root in the work.
Mhm.
So I would always suggest that as next steps. I'm a little, I'm less eager to pull the attention away from the one that we're with now. But that's your call, and
Well, she
and
pulled it
yeah,
away. I mean, it
uh-huh.
was
Right, right. So yeah, that's just a negotiation you would have with any of these parts, is when to do that, how to do that.
she's the mothering part. Exile is saying that she can't fully resolve, like burning the yoke, doing all of that is fully within where she's open and
Mm-hmm.
able now.
Mm-hmm.
She's saying she'd like to continue to rest, maybe
Mm-hmm.
move to a less hanging in purgatory kind of place, but to a specific place.
Yes.
Maybe not the last place she goes to, but to a place that feels.
Yep. Can always change it later.
Yeah, exactly. So she's choosing a place.
Great.
She's nestling in, feeling pleased with herself. She's asking self to not forget her here, which seems to be a common theme with these exiles, that they're afraid of being forgotten,
Yep.
which maybe
Yeah,
brings back original mapping and all that, because
absolutely.
maybe they're afraid I won't remember.
Yeah. Well, how will you remember?
Just quite certain I will. It's not something I feel can be
Okay.
forgotten.
Okay. Is she all right with that? I mean, is there?
What I've said to her is, you've chosen a place that there's no place. Well, it's one of the kind of no place I'd rather be places. So there's no way for me to really forget it. And she said,
Okay.
she agreed. She felt secure in that response.
Okay.
So we're going to say goodbye or see you later.
Okay.
Or what.
Yeah.
For now, she's
Just another negotiation. There is the place, there's also the time. So that's another thing that you can offer is, okay, when do you want me to come back at a specific interval or at a specific date? I use that just because for me, if something's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. But again, that's up to you and what this part needs and wants.
Yeah, we've agreed. I think this came up the last time too.
Mm-hmm.
So I've agreed, like I did the last time, that my morning
Mm-hmm.
time would be a check-in.
Great. Okay.
And so the little one, the exile, has kind of been opened up in this exchange.
Yeah.
And she's in a place that's very lovely, also a place that, I wouldn't forget it because it's where I'd want to be.
Yeah.
And she's kind of saying, yeah, I get that whole conversation. There is an entire block of my experience that has never been addressed.
Okay.
She recognizes it. She knows that I'm aware of it because the analytic part has, once kind of some of the repression of it lessened, the analytic part just grabbed onto it, of course, and wanted to turn it into a research project. So there's awareness of it, but again, it's the same issue, the whitewashing of it and the distancing, the analyst not experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Is there also that, what you were alluding to earlier about the conditionals around relationships?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's around the deficit and what was lacking so early on,
Mm-hmm.
and what was very much tied up in non-attachment issues, abandonment, those kind of
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. So you can do whatever feels right for you now with that part. In the interest of time, I'm taking notes, and if we're going to revisit that, I'm happy to revisit that in another conversation. But if it feels right for you to do any of that work with this exile, or to let the little one know that it's on your list, and you can get to that.
I've agreed that this will come up, that I will come back for conversation with this.
Okay.
She's
Again, if you'd like to do that with me, I'd be honored, and I will also make note of that.
she said she'd appreciate if you make note of it, so that if we don't come back in the interim period, that she feels confident that if you've taken a note of it, you will surely remember. And
I will commit to doing that. Yes.
and that makes her very happy.
All right. Me too. Thank you for giving me the honor of doing that.
It's like a safety, she feels, well, just in case she forgets.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
Yeah. So that was a interesting journey.
Quite.
I never quite know where it's going to go. I guess that's probably part of the course, isn't it? When you try to really genuinely enter it without an agenda.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know where it's going to go. But something I wanted to say is, one of the reasons I'm so quiet is because your intuition is so strong, and you know where to go when you're in the moment with these parts. So that's why I just don't have much to add. What I'm considering, like, oh, I'll prompt her with this or this, you're beating me to it. So just wanted you to know that.
That's very good to hear, actually. And in response to that, I think I mentioned I have done IFS with a professional before, or someone who does it professionally and is trained. And I found it very cluttered.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk and a lot of guidance on their part, which was nice, but it had more of a feel along the journey that it was about their thoughts of my parts.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like you make really great space for whatever's going on in my system, but you are a very firm and thoughtful guide. So to be honest, I didn't even notice that you didn't say much as you put it, because it felt appropriate when you did speak, and it was very helpful when you did.
Great.
So
thank you.
There's some, symbiosis going on there that, so when you started to say and explain, I thought, was he quiet?
Yeah.
So, so that's helpful. So I'm appreciating that. So thank you for clarifying, and it clearly is a good fit.
All right. I think so.
Okay. So when you open up times, you'll send a link again. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have no more sessions on the calendar. So whenever you have.
That should be any day now. I will get back to you.
Great. Because it's really nice. I like to know, like, it's really nice to look forward to knowing that there's a session coming.
Okay. I'll get back to you as soon as possible with that.
Yeah, don't take any pressure from that.
Okay. Great.
Thanks. Really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good day.
Right. Talk to you soon. You too. Bye.
Do you want to help bring more self-energy to the world? If you'd like to participate in calls or help out with this project in any way, I'd love to hear your ideas. Join the Discord server or contact me at james@liveifs.com. A huge thanks to our audio engineer, Yvonne, for your care and diligence in editing the calls. To every caller for your courage in sharing some of your parts. And to anyone out there getting to know their internal system, keep going. Who knows? That might be the most selfless, helpful thing you can do for others, and you're the only one who can do it. If you'd like to see us reach the largest audience, we must please the almighty suggestion algorithms at iTunes and YouTube. And they don't care about the power of IFS. They're looking for likes and shares and comments, and the sooner the better. Follow the links in the show notes right here in your podcast player to make your wishes known. And now, a minute of meditation. Or if you prefer, pull over. You can do it in 60 seconds. Just click one of those links. They're right there, and give us a like or a 5-star rating. It would really help. If you think this project is helping people, you're helping people by sharing it. Thank you.